Loud. Okay, we're going.
Hello, welcome to our session, Thinking About Adapting a Textbook, Tips We Learned Along the Way. I'm Cindy Gruwell from the University of West Florida in Pensacola.
I'm Robin Ewing from St. Cloud State University in St. Cloud, Minnesota.
We adapted 2 textbooks to equal 1. Choosing and using sources and introduction to logic and critical thinking are the 2 we selected to create critical thinking in academic research. In this session, we'll share the tips for adapting a textbook and the lessons we've learned so far.
So we thought it might be a good place to start by finding out what students think of textbooks in general and what they thought about the textbook we were using for our class. So Cindy and I were teaching a class together. We were both teaching a class called Critical Thinking in Academic Research, and we were using the textbook Asking the Right Questions from Brown and Keeley. And so we asked students like what they liked about that textbook, what they were looking for in a textbook. And what we did is we asked our colleagues to share the survey link in their classes as well. And we got about 33 responses or so. Slide. So what they told us is, well, they actually liked the textbook asking the right questions, but they did give us some helpful suggestions about how to organize a chapter. So they specifically mentioned that they liked the way the chapters were chunked out into, separate sections in a chapter. They liked the call out boxes. They liked it when the authors said things like attention, and then told them something in the textbook or gave them definitions. They, on the flip side, they wanted more examples to explain the concepts in the chapter. So asking the right questions, each chapter is a question. And so one of the, the chapter on fallacies, you're learning all about fallacies, and they just wanted more scenarios, more examples to help them understand the concept of fallacies. And they also wanted to know what the answers were to the practice questions. So that was some things they mentioned to us. And they liked, one other thing they liked about the textbook is that it's got short chapters.
So one of the first things we had to do was select our books and then really get into planning and a timetable. The planning involved all the organizing of what we wanted to achieve in the textbook. And then, of course, coming up with the timetable that we would meet in order to deliver the textbook by a certain date. Not an easy task. And one major tip I can give you is that you may plan out a timetable for X amount of time. Could be the academic year, could be the summer. You'll need more time. We also benefited from receiving individual grants from the Minnesota State OER collaboration. That was of great assistance. Like I said, we chose what to adapt, and then we created our work plan and divided our tasks, which was really important because we knew what we needed to get done to complete the book, but we needed to divide that up and decide how we would communicate questions and changes and come to a meeting of the minds.
So we wanted to share some of the lessons that we learned during this adventure. Slide. So I think we both thought Pressbooks was going to be a breeze, right? That it's super easy to use and it's not going to be any problem. And I don't want to say that it was actually hard. It's just kind of quirky, and we didn't really know or discover the quirks until we'd been working with Pressbooks for a while. So I remember we had a meeting and I was like, Cindy, is there a spell check in Pressbooks? Because I did a search and I can't seem to find a spell check. And Cindy's like, yeah, I did the same thing. And so we decided there's no spell check in Pressbooks. So we both are using Grammarly to help us do spell checking in Pressbooks. And then one of the other things we discovered, we'd been working for a while before we kept, why does it not seem to display right when we would go to the preview? And it seemed like the sections and the chapters, it was just like 300 chapters, and we didn't understand what was going on. So we managed to figure out eventually that what you and I call a chapter is not what Pressbooks calls a chapter. So Pressbook calls those parts, and the subsections of the part is what they call chapters. So it took us a while. We got it all figured out, and we managed to reorganize the chapters and sections in our Pressbooks instance so that it makes sense to us and it will preview correctly. The other thing we want to point out to you about Pressbooks is maybe don't change your template halfway through working on it, because it'll do some formatting changes that you may not notice right away. For example, I don't know when I caught it, but it was like, wow, why are there indents on the paragraphs for this chapter? And I don't remember there being indents before. So we're kind of going back through and changing it so everything looks the same in each chapter. Thinking about the structure is really, I think Cindy alluded to this when she was talking about like sort of working out your plan. Really think through how you're going to structure the course, I mean the textbook, so that you can get to work on it easier, quicker, and be more efficient with your time. So we did some reorganization of the chapter. So like for example, there's a chapter about making an argument, that was at the end of choosing and using sources. But we both thought that given our class is a critical thinking class, that it made sense to bring that up to the front as a way to explain why you need to learn how to find good resources and evaluate the resources, because they're going to help you when you go to make the argument. So we did some rearranging there. We deleted some chapters. There was way more about copyright than I thought that our 200 level class required. Then thinking about the audience for your textbook. So the choosing and using sources was written by librarians at Ohio State University. So it was written for an Ohio State University audience, and they like to tell you that it's Ohio State several times in the textbook. And we were writing for St. Cloud State, and we don't have the same resources. We don't have the same references. So things we were checking, like when they would talk about Columbus, Ohio as an example of something, we would change it to like St. Cloud, Minnesota, and we would change the references from Ohio State to St. Cloud State University. So think about that, whether or not you are intending your work to be for your institution and very specific to your institution, or if you're thinking, you know what, there may be some other faculty out there that may want to use this textbook, and then you can think about making it more generic, so that more people can use it without having to adapt it. We did find it helpful to you to be at least a little bit familiar with HTML, or as I told Cindy, I'm familiar with Googling HTML questions. So sometimes in Pressbooks, you're just like, this formatting just doesn't look right. I had an image that I told Cindy I spent like an hour trying to get it to format correctly with the text around it. So finally, I just had to go to another chapter that had a similar format, look at the HTML for that, because in Pressbooks, which is really nice, is your initial default screen is the what you see is what you get sort of editor, and then you can just tap a button and it flips to the HTML for you. So I just went to this chapter that was similar, copied the HTML, put that in a Word document, then tried to adapt it to the text that I was working in the chapter I was on, and got it to work. And I know both of us have tried to done some things we've just had to like, I don't know, how do we get this to space correctly? And so you just sometimes have to look up the HTML. It's we're not doing anything serious with HTML, but we are doing some minor HTML editing. And don't fall into the trap of thinking that maybe adapting is a shortcut. It'll be easier than writing it from your own. I think that we found that it's not necessarily easier or harder. It's just a different animal. And so you're having to really think through, like, we don't know why they made these choices, because we weren't the ones that made the choices. Like, why did they put that particular chapter at the end of the textbook instead of at the beginning? We don't know that because we weren't the original ones there writing it. So we have to think through some of the reasonings why you're arranging it in a particular order that maybe if you were writing writing your own, you wouldn't have to do that kind of discussion. And then one of our last things is sort of working in an open textbook, open educational resource environment is new for both of us, really sort of creating an open textbook. And it's hard to let go of perfection when editing. So we're working through that now. We're doing like we've pretty much gone through every chapter and choosing and using sources, and we're going back through to just catch any sort of minor issues that we have. And it's like, no, you do not have to make it perfect, because you can always go back and revise it very easily. It's not like you write this textbook and ship it off to the publisher, and then maybe 3 years later you work through and integrate new research and rewrite it, right? It's not that. We can make changes on the fly all the time. So that's like a mindset thing that you might need to work on if you're new to working in open textbooks. And the last thing we wanted to give you a tip is just keep working on it. Just keep moving, keep, you know, even if you only have 30 minutes one week, just do it, right? And you feel like I spent 30 minutes, like me, wrestling with an image. Just keep working on it, because if you step away from it from any time, just like with any writing project, you have to re-immerse yourself. And with Pressworks, it's like, it's not, I don't have to just re-immerse myself with the content. I've got to re-immerse myself with the tool and using Pressbooks. And it's like, oh shoot, that doesn't work. If I've got to say it's a heading 2, I can't just put a space in there. That sort of thing, that if you're working with it continuously, you don't have to stop and think about.
Joining us today. For more information, please feel free to contact either myself, Cindy Gruwell at the University of West Florida, or my colleague, Robin Ewing from St. Cloud State University.
Thank you.